Tell me if you saw this headline this week because I'll admit it, I smiled a little bit. Archdiocese of Los Angeles agrees to pay $880 million to victims of clergy sexual abuse. $880 million. That has been called the largest single child sex abuse settlement with a Catholic archdiocese so far anywhere in the world. And the story is that the Los Angeles Archdiocese, which I believe is the largest in the country, they're paying out all that money to 1,353 survivors of, Catholic Church abuse. This is the article right here. Someone is asking, what is an archdiocese? Imagine all the Catholic schools and churches in a certain community. They're all under an umbrella run by one organization. That organization is the archdiocese, or at least that's the bigger umbrella that oversees like smaller dioceses. It's just a big pyramid of sorts. But as you could see, while there's no amount of money that can replace what was taken from these 1,353 brave individuals who have suffered in silence for decades, there is justice and accountability. So, lots of money. What the hell is going on now that made all this happen, right? Because that's kind of fascinating. And if you do the math, and I had to, 880 million divided by the 1,353 people, that kind of boils down to about $650,000 per survivor of child sexual abuse. Now, what's going to happen is that the archdiocese said, we're going to give you this money, but they're going to give it to a separate group that will then decide how much the victims need based on their circumstances. Basically, that procedure doesn't involve the Catholic Church. A separate group will decide how much is to be given to each person. But what makes this even more interesting is that this is only the latest giant amount of money the Catholic Church in Los Angeles has had to give out. Because check this out. This is from 2007. This is from The Guardian. LA Archdiocese agrees $660 million payout for sex abuse victims. And look at this first thing here. Cardinal Roger Mahoney, the leader of Los Angeles' Catholics, yesterday apologized to hundreds of victims of predatory priests after the archdiocese agreed to pay $660 million to settle claims of sexual abuse. So they did this in 2007. You could see the date at the very top there. They did it in 2007. Already, what is up with that? And by the way, by 2014, that number had gone from 660 million to 740 million. Like, they had to keep paying because other people were suing them. I found this in 2019. In 2019, they agreed to pay a record $8 million settlement to a teenager who was sexually abused by the athletic director at our Catholic high school, who continued to work despite prior allegations of misconduct. So that was also the Archdiocese of Los Angeles. And by the way, in the years since, they've made other individual settlements to other individuals. So what is happening separate from all of that that made them pay even more money out now? Because you would think, it's like a Shohei Ohtani contract. You're going to get one amazing, crazy contract for your life. Enjoy it. Congratulations. You're not going to get a second one. You're just going to get the one. So if the LA Archdiocese paid out $660 million at one time in 2007, where's all this other stuff coming from? Well, let's talk about that, because you know why they have to pay out all this money now? We can thank Democrats in California. Okay. And this is coming straight from the Los Angeles Archdiocese website. California State Assembly Bill 218, which was passed in 2019, lifted the statute of limitations for a second time in California, allowing civil claims during a 3-year window from 2020 to 2022 by adults who were abused as minors. Let's talk about that for a second, because this is very interesting. In 2019, the California legislature basically said, there are a lot of people with Me Too, with all these people understanding more and coming to terms with the idea that they may have been molested when they were kids and they're only now realizing it, they may not be able to file a lawsuit because it happened such a long time ago. So this bill in 2019 said, we're going to open up a 3-year window from 2020 to 2022. And the law used to say you're only allowed to file sexual lawsuits if you're up to the age of 26. Well, they said with this bill, we're going to raise it to 40. You can be up to 40. What if you're older than 40 and you were also a victim? Well, they said you're allowed to file a lawsuit up to 5 years after, and I'm quoting here, after you discover that the psychological injury or illness was caused by sexual assault. Because some people who grew up in the Catholic Church and maybe thought, oh my God, what this priest is doing to me is horrible, but I think this is just something that's supposed to happen, or I'm supposed to go along with it. They don't realize until they're 50, 60, maybe seeing these stories in the news that no, that was not normal. That was not okay. And what happens if you're 60 years old and only now are you able to admit, not just to other people, but to yourself, that you were a victim of sexual assault when you were a kid? What happens if that's the case? Well, the previous California law said, too bad, so sad. You can't do anything about it. Well, this 2019 law said, if you just came to terms with this, you can also file a lawsuit. By the way, the law also said if the abuse involved a cover up of earlier assaults, like the Catholic Church knew somebody was abusive, but they let him stay as a priest, and then something happened to you, you could be eligible for triple the damages. So that's the bill they passed in 2019. And so then this window was open for 3 years. By the way, you know who really hated that law? It was the Archbishop of Los Angeles. Most California Roman Catholic bishops are asking a judge to throw out a 2019 law that allowed accusers of clergy sexual abuse to sue, even if they were molested decades ago. And motions filed in January in Southern and Northern Superior Courts asked judges to rule the bill unconstitutional. One of the people who was pushing for judges to say that law was illegal was Los Angeles Archbishop Jose Gomez. He was trying to get this tossed out. Guess what? It didn't work. That law was declared to be legal. There was nothing wrong with it. And so they did pass that law. They did open up that window where people could file lawsuits. And check out what happened when they did it. The window led to some 4,000 total claims against Catholic dioceses in California, including some 1,900 in which the LA Archdiocese was named. So about half the people who came forward during that window of time said, yeah, this happened in Los Angeles when I was there as a kid, which also makes sense because it's the largest archdiocese in the state. And so then, just because you file a lawsuit doesn't mean you're automatically guaranteed anything, because they have to adjudicate every lawsuit. But basically, that's what's leading to this announcement we saw this week, where the church said, all right, we cannot handle 1,900 lawsuits because a lot of them are going to be legit. And as you could see, they said over 1,300 of them were absolutely legitimate. That's what the courts found. And so the question for the LA Archdiocese is, do you handle all these individually? Or do you just say, look, we're going to throw a bunch of money at all of you to make all of this go away, and you don't get to sue us afterwards, and no one else can sue us either, because we're basically saying, here's a chunk of money, please stop suing us over all this. And the plaintiffs, the victims of the abuse, and their lawyers said, yeah, we'll take that deal. No one else gets to sue you individually. You give us this money, all of these problems go away. And that's what they agreed this week. And they'll pay $880 million as a settlement to make all this stop. Now, one of the things that came up is, well, where are they getting this money from? I saw this comment a lot online. Is this where the tithe money is going in Los Angeles? Like, your tithes are just going into the pockets of child abuse victims? That's actually not the case. This is what the Archdiocese says. Archbishop Gomez said the Archdiocese would fund its settlement through a combination of archdiocesan, I don't know how to pronounce that, reserves, and other assets, as well as loans and payments that can be expected from other parties named in the lawsuits, like religious orders. To put that another way, they have a whole bucket full of money. They're like Scrooge McDuck, and the Pope lives in the giant money bin. And they said, we'll just give you some of our money there. How much do you need? Oh, almost $1 billion. Give us a second. Then they walked away and they came back with $1 billion. And they said, here. The Archbishop stressed that no funds would be used from parishes or school donations or other collections and campaigns that they use to help other groups of people. So basically saying, look, we're not taking your tithe money, we're taking our assets. We're going to go to the Cayman Islands, grab a little money, we'll come back, deal with it. And like, okay, I guess. I kind of wish the whole archdiocese would have to shut down, but okay. Other things they said that I found interesting is that the Archdiocese of Los Angeles is not going to shut down, but check this out. In California, the fallout from that law that was passed a few years ago in California, it was cited in recent bankruptcy announcements by other Catholic dioceses, including Fresno, Oakland, Santa Rosa, Sacramento, San Diego, and San Francisco, the Archdiocese of San Francisco. They all declared bankruptcy. They all said it's because that window was opened and all these people filed lawsuits and all of these victims exist because priests molested them. And they all said, we're going to declare bankruptcy. In the case of Los Angeles, the largest in the country, one of the largest worldwide, officials indicated that a bankruptcy filing was not a financially sound solution. Okay. I mean, man, how nice is it to have to give up $880 million in one fell swoop? And you're still like, you know what? Bankruptcy's not the worst option here. Like, or we're okay not doing a bankruptcy. We have enough money to go around. Like, it's almost, I kind of want to know how much more money they have just lying around that they didn't have to declare bankruptcy. But okay. The Archbishop also issued an apology on the website, which I feel like I have to share, but I don't feel like it. I'm sorry for every one of these incidents from the bottom of my heart. My hope is that this settlement will provide some measure of healing for what these men and women have suffered. Okay, maybe he's sincere about that, even though this is the same guy who tried to stop that law from going into effect. But let me try to give Gomez some credit. His predecessor was Roger Mahoney, who not only was involved with that first payout from like 2007, Mahoney actively tried to conceal sex abuse cases from law enforcement officials. And part of the new settlement this week is that the Archdiocese says we'll release files that documented abuse as we knew it. So, I agree. I hope it provides closure for some of those survivors and their families. But I go back to thinking, if the LA Archdiocese is not declaring bankruptcy, they're basically saying, we have enough money, we'll give you this much, and we're still going to be okay. That makes me think the Catholic Church in this case got off really easy. It's like telling Elon Musk, hey, you have to pay a fine of $1 billion. Is it a lot of money? Yes. Is it a lot of money to him? No, not really. If he loses $1 billion, he's not going to notice. He spent $44 billion on Twitter and nothing changed in his case. He just got richer. So asking the Archdiocese to pay hundreds of millions of dollars at once, on top of the hundreds of millions they paid like 2 decades ago, they're still doing just fine. The only thing that's hurt maybe is its reputation. But honestly, if you thought the LA Archdiocese had a good reputation already, you're part of the problem. Like, their reputation should have been shot years ago. And nobody's going to jail. That needs to be pointed out too. The churches and the Catholic schools in this archdiocese, they're still going to be existing after all this is over. Now, I believe the Archbishop Gomez, he said, there is no one who is working in our archdiocese today who is accused of anything in these settlements. Like all the people who were accused of committing these crimes, they're either dead or they're no longer working for the church, which is good. Fine. There's still plenty of problems. There are some allegations that have not been substantiated, but just so you know, I guess the settlement represents some accountability. It's more than the survivors would have seen if church leaders got their way. That's for damn sure, because they did everything in their power to stop these lawsuits from even existing, because they did not want anyone to be allowed to sue. They thought they had passed the expiration date, and so they didn't want these lawsuits happening in the first place. And now they just want to limit the damage, which is why they agreed to the settlement. So, but the only reason, and I think this is kind of the moral of the story, the only reason these survivors, these 1,300 plus people, are going to see any kind of justice is because the Catholic Church could not be trusted to do the morally right thing. But the secular government, full of Democrats, by the way, took the moral high road and gave those survivors a chance to find justice. And they had plenty of religious opposition, and they did it anyway. So again, if you're looking for who the moral heroes are in this story, it's the Democrats who passed the law and not the Catholic officials who, after they tried every other thing to put a stop to it and it failed, they said, fine, here's some money, go away. So congrats to the Democrats, I guess, for making this happen. All right, gonna pause there for a bit. What questions we got here? Oh, thank you for becoming a new YouTube member. I appreciate that so much. The rest of you can do it too. The button's down below. Literally defending predators and child molesters, and yet have the gall to blame us in the LGBTQ plus community of grooming. Seriously, makes my blood boil too. It's always projection. It is always projection with Republicans. Everything they accuse other people of doing, it's happening in their own ranks, and they just look the other way every single time. Every accusation is a confession. I cannot wrap my mind around protecting abusers. Well, Keith, that's because you're a dirty heathen, and if you just went to church, you would know better. Do churches have insurance against these sorts of lawsuits? Believe it or not, they do. I don't know what the specifics are in the case of the Los Angeles Archdiocese, but there is insurance for Catholic churches when it comes to allegations of child sex abuse. That's a real thing. I believe I've covered that in another video. I can't remember which one. But yeah, there is insurance for this sort of thing. And, one of the interesting things is if the LA Archdiocese has that insurance, well, can you just imagine what their premiums are going to be like after all of this?